Kia ora tātou. As we're journeying towards the International Women's Day, something that we're doing across our women's ministry's social media channels is we're talking with women in leadership. And leadership in the Salvation Army, as we've always had women in leadership in the Salvation Army, and we're well ahead of a lot of churches and organisations in that regard, which is wonderful. But leadership can look very different for different people, and we have women leading in all kinds of different ways. And so it is a privilege today to have Commissioner Janine Donaldson, who is the new Territorial Commander, here to talk to us a little bit about what leadership looks like for her. So hello, Janine, and thank you. We're going to get straight into it. Could you please give us 2 or 3 key characteristics or ideas that you think are essential to make a good leader?
Yeah, one of the things that I've had for years is from James 1, verse 19, where it says, be, quick to listen and slower to respond and slow to become angry. I think one of the things with leadership is you can feel like you've got to provide the answers straight away. And I think in that sometimes you can forget actually to really listen to what someone's saying before you respond and react. So that's one thing. I think you have to be authentic. I'm human. There's nothing extraordinary about me. To the Lord, I'm Janine. So, and he's, yes, he's called me. I'm also very accountable for that calling and the responsibilities that are mine. So, I'm certainly not perfect. So you have to be authentic in that space. I think, too, a great thing of mine is we are the body of Christ, Carla. Every part is important. And yesterday, when I had the privilege to speak for a little bit at the welcome, we read the scriptures about the body of Christ from Corinthians. Each part is important. And when we are sick, we don't just say, unless there is extremes, I appreciate. But we don't say, oh, you're not well, you're very annoying, you've been sore, I'll get rid of you. No, we medicate it. We support it, right? We encourage it. And I just love that analogy. I love that we are the body of Christ and the eye is the eye, it can't be the foot. And so we all have a part to play. And that is so important, and never more important than in leadership for me than knowing that I've got these amazing people who are all doing their part, and without, I need them. So I love that. And working together, that all fits in together. We work together, and we appreciate our differences. We know that we are different, and it's how we work with those differences. When we disagree, how do we disagree? Because that's what the world looks like. What sets us apart in our living, especially in the things that maybe we hold, we have very strong opinions on. How do we live with that when maybe our opinion isn't heard or we don't feel heard? That's what people look at when we disagree. Yeah. How are we with each other? Does love still show? Do our values still come out? Those things that, are very important to us.
Oh, those are really good points. I want to just pick up on one that you mentioned there about being authentic. And you said, I'm human, I'm not perfect. Leadership is not easy, and there's always challenges. There's always things that we've got to be working on. So this is a bit of a personal question, but is there something particularly for you about leadership that you find hard, that you have to work on yourself?
Oh, definitely. Again, it's this to listen, the James, even though I've had it, for years in my head and think about it all the time, it's to really listen and not to jump in and come to some wrong conclusion. It's to pause. These practical things. Keeping close to the Lord, I have to keep my own spiritual walk close to the Lord. I have to invest in that because everyone knows as soon as you start to step away, things can go wrong. I think the other thing is, on a practical sense, there's things that don't really spin my wheels. Like I realise I have to learn a little bit more about property. I don't have to know everything. I've got wonderful people that help, but I have to be able to read and to understand in order to be with the team and making good decisions. So things like, finances and, property and things like that, and legal, governance matters. Those are things, whether I like them or not, whether they are really me, doesn't matter. That's part of what I've been called to do, and that's the accountable piece. And I need to be at least with it. I need to, to at least know some facts so that the decision-making process is sound and, robust. So
but there's always things to learn, isn't there? Whatever stage, we've never we've never got there.
Yeah, and I hope that people with my leadership would come and say, are you aware that this wasn't right? I think criticism. It's hard for us to take. Well, I'm going to speak for myself. Criticism, but I think you always have to be. It's also our biggest learning. Sometimes, isn't it? When we can really grapple, yes, we might feel a bit hurt, but when we think through it, we can actually see, yeah, actually, you're right. There's things I need, to improve on in that way.
Absolutely. And if people don't tell us, then we often don't know, do we? Because we're in our little world and we need that outside voice. But how do we respond when we hear it? Sometimes we just go, oh, but yeah. Yes, there's a lot of wisdom in that. We take it and we listen and see, yes, what do I need to do? And we learn. So moving on to you now in this new role that you have just started, I want to ask you what this role means to you, and especially as this is something new for our territory. You are the first married woman to be in this position. Is that special to you? What does it mean to you?
Incredibly, incredibly special. I feel really honoured. I do feel honoured. Do I feel overwhelmed? I do, but people are praying for me. People uphold me. They know I'm not perfect. They know we need to continue to work together as a team and that we're the body of Christ, just the things. But yes, incredibly, I just see it as a great honour. And I appreciate that international leaders are looking at married women in different ways. I feel that there's flexibility now when they're looking at couples with strengths. And so instead of just putting, one person in, and the other sort of following through on that, they're actually saying, what are the strengths of both? How can we actually utilise that to the best? And, going right back to the start, Carla, when you said about the theology of the Salvation Army has always been to give women equal. We've always been equals, but we haven't really been able to always work that through. It's taken us quite a few years to sort of really grapple with that, but I think it's really been grappled with now by international leaders, and I really, really appreciate and value that.
Yeah, that's cool. And so that kind of leads into what I was going to say, is that I've been reading, and you're probably aware of some of the writings of Janet Munn, an officer from America, who's written a lot about this, about women in leadership. And she points out that there's 53% of officers are women around the world, but yet when you do go to those higher positions, it's something I think about 7 or 8%. So whilst on one hand we do empower women in leadership, it doesn't necessarily follow all the way through yet. And so I just wanted to ask you, do you think it's important that women's voices are heard at all levels? And if so, how can we encourage that to happen?
Look, it's very important that women's voices are heard at all levels. And I think that sometimes I think it's personalities too, how we're created. I think that now more than ever, as I said before, we are getting opportunity to speak into issues and women are being heard. And I think we also have to not be frightened in ourselves to project what we think, to find our own voice and to actually say. I think perhaps there might have been a reluctance to do that for whatever reason. I think sometimes in learning, one has been sort of promoted to do something or to go somewhere, and I think we just haven't thought about the balance of that always as equal. And I think it's definitely changing now. But yeah, we still have a work to do, and we've still got to be a very good, clear voice, pointing, encouraging our women and looking for their gifts and skills and utilising them, encouraging them to step up, and I think having conversations about what it is that they feel they need. Maybe in them there's some areas that they would like developed, and I think it's really important to say, what is it we can develop in you? What is it that you feel God has given you that we can use more?
Yes. So looking ahead to have those women who have those skills so that they can take those positions. But I think too, sometimes our women are offered things, but we can feel a little shy. We can feel like perhaps not quite confident enough, but you've got to step into it anyway, don't we, if we know that God is calling us to things.
I love the fact that, you've got Zacchaeus, right, who wanted to see, desperate to see Jesus, a short sort of person. Now, it came to me much, I don't know why it took me so long to think this, but God already had the tree he was going to climb up. He was right next to it. So God already knew. And I think like him, right? We didn't, I mean, isn't that just wonderful? God knew, and the tree was planted. He could have just been standing in the dust and the dirt somewhere else, right? But he had the tree right there, so God knew. And I just think, like you're saying, we need to scamper up the tree.
That's cool. I've never thought about the Zacchaeus story and thought about the tree in the story.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some great points about leadership and about your own journey, and just that encouragement for our women in leadership. So thank you for joining me today and giving us some things to think about. And just to all our people out there watching, we hope you have a brilliant day. Ka kite.